Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Han. I'm the founder of SafeLink Network. And today I'm excited to share my research about discovering coordinated campaigns across social media platforms. First, a little bit about my background. I graduated from NYU last year. I did a PhD there in data science. And during my PhD, my thesis is basically about tracing false and malicious information on the internet. And also during my PhD, I was fortunate to intern at companies like Google, Twitter, Amazon Web Services. So I work at different security and anti-abuse teams there. So with all that experience and my training after I graduated, I founded this company called SafeLink Network to continue building technologies to help make the internet safer. So the mission of SafeLink Network is to assist journalists, fact checkers, security analysts, and humanitarian workers to monitor and track coordinated behaviors on social media. So how do we do that? So one tool we have been developing is called Information Tracer. And actually I started to work on that during my PhD. And in 2021, I had a paper published in Misinfo 2021. It's a workshop co-located with WWW 2021. So in that paper, I described the architecture of the system. But basically the key and ingenuity here is we get data from different social media platforms to really try to detect cross-platform behavior. And this talk will focus on some of the real-world examples of coordinated campaigns we have been tracking. So it will be basically driven by real-world data. And yeah, but just a very high-level overview about our tool, how Information Tracer works. So you can think of it as a search engine like Google, but for social media platforms. So the data flows from left to right. So on the left, the user can give a query like hashtag, keyword, or URL. And then currently we cover 5 social media platforms: Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Reddit, and Instagram. And we know there are other popular platforms like TikTok and Telegram, but there are some engineering challenges to be able to get those data. But those are the 5 platforms we cover, and we gather the data, aggregate the data about how the keyword is shared, and then we generate different networks and metrics to quantify how coordinated is the campaign. So you might wonder, like, what are coordinated behaviors and where can you find them? Actually, there are many manifestations of coordinated behaviors. So here are 3 main categories. So one part is political campaigns in diverse countries. For example, we're currently working with agencies in different countries to study what's going on in Brazil, Nigeria, Ethiopia, but basically countries where there is an election or a regional conflict are prone to have those campaigns. And another place where there are coordinated behavior are hate speech campaigns targeting, for example, celebrities. And some we are looking at, one is Amber Heard and also Meghan Markle, who is the Duchess of Sussex. And also there are more like scam networks on the social media to spread fraud information like fake crypto, etc. So in this talk, I want to give 2 case studies to dive deeper into those specific campaigns and show how our visualization and network analysis can help analysts to understand what is actually going on. So you can kind of put yourself into like a security analyst in a trust and safety team, and yeah, and kind of you use this case study to understand and find those bad actors. So the first one is about discovering coordinated campaigns in Brazil, and just to give you a high level view, as I mentioned, there are many kind of campaigns going on, especially in the global south. For example, some of the countries we have been looking is Mexico, Brazil, Nigeria. Nigeria actually, like, I think they just had an election and the results just came out, and there is already like dispute about the election results. And also in Ethiopia, so the context is there's kind of civil war in Ethiopia. There's a region called Tigray, and there's alleged war crime and genocide, and there are hashtags like Tigray genocide. So basically, if you know kind of those hashtags and you know what to search, you can find very interesting behaviors and campaigns. So let's look at Brazil in this example. And the hashtag we'll trace is Brazilian Spring. So this is a hashtag that's prominent before and also during the riot that happened in January this year. So the background is, you probably have seen it on the news. On January 8th this year, there was a riot in Brazil where basically far right or extreme groups, they went to the capital and stormed the capital. So very bad situation. So basically at the same time on the internet, this hashtag Brazilian Spring was being shared. And we want to understand basically who is sharing them and how the narrative unfolds. So the first realization we can look at is basically how the like interaction increases as a function of time. So in this graph, the x-axis is time and the y is the cumulative number of interaction on each platform. And because we have data from different platforms, so you can also compare which platform is more popular. So in this case, Twitter has more discussion about this Brazilian Spring topic. And also you can look at the shape of the slope to understand when there is a breakout. So here the vertical line is basically January 8th. So basically that's when the topic really broke out. So this gives you an aggregated view, but we can actually look deeper into the network behavior. So the network we generate is very intuitive. So there are two types of nodes. So some are the hashtags that people share in the text, and some other nodes are the social media accounts, and the account and hashtag is connected if that account share that hashtag. And also the edge is weighted. So the thicker the edge, the more interaction or impression that conversation receives. So basically, because we have the timestamp of all the posts, so we can start with, at the beginning, basically it's just a few hashtags and a few Twitter users. And if we investigate those users, they are tweeting something like Lula is a fraud. So Lula is a newly elected president in Brazil. And those people are sharing hashtags like Brazil Spring, Brazil was stolen. And then later on, the network grew bigger. There are other accounts from other platforms like Instagram, and they share text that's more violent. Basically, they're kind of calling for civil resistance. Let's go Brazil, military intervention. And later on, more Instagram accounts and sharing hashtag like censura no. I think it means no censor. So you can see how the narrative grows. And eventually, so the network become very, very dense after January 8th because so many users are tweeting about it. So on the left-hand side is the bigger network of the entire conversation. But we can also basically filter out nodes with low interaction and only look at the core of the network. So it's basically just a few Twitter users and Instagram accounts who are kind of contributing to the main impression. So I think the takeaway is basically it's important to identify those type of users, and if the the platform can somehow intervene. It can help disrupt the network or slow down the spread. So that's one case study. And the other one I want to show is about tracking coordinated hate speech campaigns. And just to give you some background, so one person we found that's targeted on the internet is Amber Heard. And so yeah, she's a celebrity in the United States. And her ex-husband is called Johnny Depp, and they have been involved in some legal lawsuit, which I'm not gonna go into because it's very complicated. But what's happening is during this, legal lawsuit on the internet, there is like a flood of information, just kind of hate speech against Amber Heard. And to quote her own word, the vilification I have faced on social media is an amplified version of the ways in which women are re-victimized when they come forward. So actually, initially, we were approached by some NGO who was studying those hate speech, and they want kind of our technology to help them like analyze what's going on. So basically, we did this experiment to quantify the amount of hate speech. And just to be fair, actually, there are like two campaigns. So there are people who support Johnny Depp and also people who support Amber Heard. And the type of hashtag they use will be like justice for Johnny Depp, Amber Heard is a liar, and the reverse for the other campaign. So we basically used those hashtags as a keyword to search. And what we found is the pro Johnny Depp campaign first is much bigger, higher volume, and also there is a coordinated network behavior. And the pro Amber Heard campaign is small, and we don't find indication of coordinated or inauthentic behavior. So to give you some evidence, so in terms of volume, on the left is the pro Johnny Depp campaign, and if you look at the y-axis, they receive about 20 times more impression. And also what's more suspicious is the network behavior. So here we are generating the same type of network, so hashtags and users. And basically we find, again, a cluster of Instagram accounts that repeatedly share those anti-Amber Heard hashtag. And also what's interesting is those accounts, they all look similar, but they are also somewhat different. And yeah, they seem to originate from different countries like Italy, Brazil, and so on. So it's very hard to know, the true identity and if they are actually coordinated or not. It's very hard to know, but we can kind of infer from the behavior. So for example, they have been tweeting at a very high frequency, and they just repeatedly tweet. So the average Instagram post per user is with those hashtags is 7.7 in our collection. And if you just like search a random keyword and you calculate average post per user, it's normally less than 2, because most of the time people don't like add a hashtag and tweet again and again. So other than that pattern, we also look at the co-occurrence of other hashtags, and again, like very high volume, and the content is all about, Amber Heard is a liar, is an abuser, is finished, and so on. And actually later on, we found that this is not an isolated incident. So there is another people who are targeted. So Meghan Markle, she's the Duchess of Sussex, and her husband, Prince Harry. So they have also been targeted. And actually the technique is pretty similar. So there are hashtags like Meghan Markle is a liar and so on. So we also collected social media posts with those hashtags. And in this case, the platform that's kind of pushing those narratives is YouTube. So YouTube has more interaction. And when we look at what YouTube channels are generating the content, basically is all kinds of kind of YouTubers who make fun of the news. And so the next question is, why are they doing this? What's their motive? And we believe, based on other studies, basically they are hate speech is basically being monetized, so they just use hate speech as a clickbait. And according to different studies, like an Instagram influencer with 10K followers can get $1,000 monthly income, so not bad. And the YouTuber with 20K views can get monthly income of $1,000 US. So basically, they just use those content to drive more traffic, which turn into profit. And the last part, like I'm quoting from the UK member of Parliament, Chris Brand, and he told the UK Parliament that it is becoming their richest clickbait thing. It drives viewing and earns advertising income. So here 8, he's referring to the UK media. Yeah, so basically, because of this whole kind of advertisement incentive, yeah, hate speech is basically being monetized, and it is, unless there's some kind of policy level change, I think it's hard to stop those type of channels. Yeah, and just to summarize, the coordinated campaigns we track, they are widespread across the globe, and also threat actors are highly motivated by power in the case of political campaign, and also by money in the case of hate speech and clickbait. And also our cross-platform intelligence from information tracer can be a useful tool, at least to exposing what is happening. But we're not in a position to mitigate those threats, so definitely happy to talk and collaborate with platforms or like humanitarian agencies who can actually reach the locals and inform their decisions. Yeah, that's the end of my talk. Thanks for listening. Okay.
I have a question. So we discussed earlier this in the week, so I'm going to ask you again. So the inauthentic behavior, precision is important in the sense of in order to act. So this looks suspicious, right? But for us to be like really precise and say, okay, this is really inauthentic behavior, there's like a point where there's coordination, and there's another point which is organic growth. So I wonder, like you were mentioning about like the different nationalities, and in my mind, there's like a out of the normal distribution in things like, for example, if the issue is in, say, in Spain, it would make sense to me that most of the actors in the attack would be from Spain as well. If they are international, there's like a big mix of nationalities. That looks suspicious, right? So I was wondering if you did any analysis on that, the distribution of, or what is normality versus what is not normality in terms of attacks versus organic growth and virality.
Yeah, so yeah, I did look into like, let's say, the content of their posts, and I think like they are pretty sophisticated actors, so they will basically generate, for example, content that's a mix of hate speech and normal speech. So basically they try to mix in the distribution, and they try to be as the average part. Yeah, so they have different countries, but again, like majority is in US. So yeah, and so it's actually very difficult to assess. And I think, even though, I mean, I'm using the public API, so that's the total amount of feature I can get. But I think even like within the company, you have more like strong technical signals like IP or email address. I mean, they can also use proxy, and I mean, there are ways like buy cheap phones. So I think it's actually very hard to find like what's the feature, right, that links them all together. Yeah, so basically, I and in terms of precision, I feel sometimes maybe we can be a little bit or maybe we don't suspend those accounts outright. Like we have some other ways to intervene, like we put an interstitial or just have a pop-up, so add some friction and say how those users respond, right? So we don't suspend the account, but we can just have a warning or something, like we say this suspicious behavior and just observe how they respond. And if they are bad people, they might be turned away, and if they're authentic, they might appeal.
Thank you. Any questions?
I was going to ask a very similar question. When you talk about some coordinated effort, like it sounds like there's an actor behind it and they're trying to coordinate something, as opposed to, for example, in here, you're showing us the Johnny Depp thing. Well, these are Johnny Depp fans as such. It's not very surprising that they're going to defend Johnny Depp, but they're going to be in Johnny Depp's side, right? And given the publicity of the event between that divorce, there's going to be a lot of posts that will be shared and that's going to get some attention. As such, it's really hard to know, right? What is the intent of what's happening here versus there is some coordinated attack or there is some attacker, right? And the second part of that is also very interesting, which is, well, this is actually a public trial between two people. As such, everybody is entitled to their opinions, right? Where does the freedom of speech kick in? And where is the boundary at which we start basically saying, okay, this is hate speech? For example, at least in my mental picture, Johnny Depp is a liar or the other person is a liar is necessarily an opinion, right? It's not necessarily hate speech versus once they start talking about killing them, threatening them, and as such, then it becomes a different boundary altogether, right? So we will need to be able to somehow differentiate between these two things.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, I think like intent, estimating intent, yeah, it's extremely difficult, and it can be a mix of intent, like they support Johnny Depp, and then they can also get some ad revenue from people visiting. So why not? Yeah. Yeah, so it's very, very hard. Yeah, I agree. So, but I think at least if this can help people to think about it, because yeah, basically, as I mentioned, like at first some NGO like human rights group reached out to me, and they said, I mean, this is just one example of those two people, but other women celebrities, they are kind of targeted in similar way, but it's very subtle because you can't really know if people hate them or yeah, is there any operation going on? So so basically I was helping them to investigate, and that's kind of as far as our evidence can show. Yeah, so I think yeah, this definitely requires further investigation, but yeah, but what we are doing is actually we have, like with the NGO, we have like a GitHub repository, so they are putting basically those as evidence, and people can just go look at it and try to re-verify what's going on. Yeah.
Any other question?
Not a question, but a continuation of this conversation. So one way it could be to also study the behavior of these accounts that you're suspicious of. So if you go to one of these, which have like more than 100K followers, and then they have 2 likes and 5 likes on their photos, there's something suspicious that these followers are actually bots, and this isn't like a real thing. Or where was this account created, or what do they usually post? When did they change their bio to support Johnny Depp? Like this could be more signals to say, well, this is probably not a real fan or not someone who's actually engaged in this topic, but something artificially created. So, but yeah, so it's intent. It's difficult to, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So I think, yeah, in the end, it will be a combination of those type of tool surfacing some accounts and like human analysts to dive deeper and investigate, because yeah, that will require some definitely human level intelligence and further investigation, and yeah, I think accessing some other API to get account like history level data. But I agree, like, yeah, looking deeper into their timeline.